I don't know about you, but 9:30 on the last day of the show feels like 6:30 in the morning. Thank you all for coming out. We don't have a huge crowd, but we do have some fantastic presenters today. So I'll ask them to just come to the stage. I thought they were following me, and I turned around, they weren't there. What we're going to do is something very special, something we've never done before at this show. We're very proud of these four who won last night, as you don't see, won awards for their work in the IoT space in the last year. They have no prep. I got 5 minutes with them just now to get them ready for this panel, so it's about as informal as it can possibly be. I've asked each of them to give us a story about how they decided to do what they decided to do, how they feel about the awards, and they're allowed to give a little bit of overview of their background and who they are, what they've done, and why it's important especially to you. So we know that you're here because you want to learn how to build industrial IoT systems. The whole point is to learn how to do industrial IoT systems. So these are four people who've actually built some systems that worked, and they won awards for the work that they've done. And we're very proud to introduce them. So let's go left to right, starting here.
Okay. Thank you. It's a very pleasure to have this kind of the prize. I think we have been done just for this kind of the area for a long time. So you see, Huawei is just an ICT company, infrastructure company. So we have just been devote ourselves just to this kind of the area for a long time. So you see, we are trying to collect, to build this kind of the better collected world just in this kind of the area. So we're using IoT technology just to try to think about how we can just make this kind of the scenario so successfully. So that's why we think about that. In the world, there are a lot of these kind of the vehicles just around the cities. So they are so how to say, they're eager to find this kind of the technology to combine and collect all of them. So we have done this kind of things together with PSA. It's a good showcase just to think about that, how to provide good services for the users, for this kind of the customers. So they are trying to transform themselves from this kind of the traditional manufacturer to this vehicle-based managed service provider. So that's why they need this kind of the technologies. So we offer them this kind of the IoT platform and with Huawei Cloud to get combined together to serve the customer. So now it's so successfully. Just they have already deployed this kind of the solution in just China and also European countries. So now deployed all around 4 million vehicles just online. So now everything just is ready. So they just provide this kind of services to their customers for this kind of the, how to say, rental service and this kind of the car sharing service. So every kind of the service they can provide just on their platform. They call that is collected vehicle modular platform based on Huawei Cloud and this kind of the Huawei IoT platform.
We'll come back to I like the business model transformation picture of what you're talking about. Can you introduce yourself just a little bit, Davy, so that people know who you are?
You mean for?
You didn't say who I am.
Okay, come on. Yeah. So you know that we just use this kind of the business model just to get because previously they are just a traditional manufacturer. So they only just manufacture this kind of the cars, right? So they cannot just collect all of them. But now they want to be the service provider. So provide this kind of the car services and vehicle services just based on this kind of the IoT platform.
And what award did you win last night?
And you mean just for this kind of the innovative best solution?
Who cares?
Actually, just for okay.
But most innovative solution.
Thank you. Yes, right. Yeah.
Hey, good morning. I'm Richard Kerslake from Intel, and we were very pleased last night to receive with our other team members the Testbed Award. I'm really reminded back to Dr. Soley's presentation on the first day, when I think you stood up and you said one of the questions you're often asked is, who's going to win the IoT? You know, which single company is going to win? And your answer was unequivocal. No single company is going to win. And I think that's the key point, right? It's not called the Internet of Thing. It's the Internet of Things. And I think if we really want this industry to succeed, it's about customers being able to take different hardware solutions made by different vendors, powered by different silicon technology, and onboard them to a range of different clouds. And if we want to really see the expansion in this industry, it's all about, often hear people talking about proof of concept or even proof of value. And if we want customers to really embrace IoT, they need to see the return on investment because they're selling it to their management, they're asking for money to make those investments, and we need to reduce the friction in the system. And that's why you saw in our test bed us working with other industry players to try and solve a problem, onboarding of how you connect new devices to a cloud, and how do you do it securely, how do you do it efficiently, how do you do it in a flexible fashion? And one single company doesn't solve that alone. Even Intel, you don't solve that alone. And that's why in our test bed, we reached out to companies such as ARM to say, hey, do you share this vision of any device to any cloud? And absolutely is their vision, any device to any cloud, flexibility. Companies such as Hitachi, who are represented here today with JP1 and InfoSim. And I think the one thing you see there, you're looking at companies that are based in Japan, you're looking at companies based in the US, companies, in the case of InfoSim, based in Germany. This is a true worldwide initiative, and we really either solve it together or we kind of fail on our own. And I think the test bed, as you said, Dr. Soley, is all about making it real, making it happen, and showing how these pieces of the IoT puzzle truly plug in to each other, because in a vacuum almost anything can work once, but if you really want it to succeed, it has to work as a truly interconnected system. And so for the test bed, we were really delighted to be here and even more pleased to win, so thank you.
Well, I particularly like the fact that you're willing to, even last night and this morning, to mention specifically Hitachi and InfoSim and ARM. That says something about the 21st century, the way we have to cooperate to make things successful. Thank you. We move down, but in English, please.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ilia Zelenkin, and I'm working in Nokia. And on behalf of Nokia, I received yesterday the award for Best Innovation Technology. And thanks a lot for the jury for this award. I guess I would try to be more practical because it's an innovation award, and it's very important maybe to recap how we reached this innovation, starting from what. And in general, the whole sensing as a service started with the problem that we had to solve 1.5 years ago. We had to monitor our base stations in real time in the field. And to do that, we didn't have enough equipment to start with, and base station itself is already loaded. So we thought, okay, let's put a gateway so that will pre-process the data and then send on the results, which was an obvious choice, provided you don't have eternal bandwidth. And once we put the gateway, okay, let's put something else, because it has to deliver more value than just monitor the base station. It's cool, but deploying on 20,000 sites, one gateway costs a lot of money. So let's add some more value on that. We say, okay, what do we have on site? We have energy, we have diesel generators, we have towers, we have the site itself, the shelter. Okay, let's add some sensors there. Maybe it is worth something. And we had sensors that monitor temperature, monitor humidity, pressure. Then we realized that actually those factors, they influence the behavior of the base station, because we track them, and if you have, let's say, 100 measurements coming in real time and you see them all in real time, it can also affect how you do service the base stations. And step by step, we are getting into a situation where we reach a site monitoring solution. And that sounds pretty straightforward and very well-defined thing. And what happens next is like, let's try find a customer and try this solution. And we go, and Cellcom accepts the challenge because they had a very interesting challenge with the sandstorm in Israel. So you can track it with the dust sensor very easily. And the second challenge they had is also related to the fact, to the air conditioning, that people forgot to switch it off. Because you come, it's like 45 on the street, and you switch it on in the site, and you sometimes forget it. It's a small thing, but when 2,000 sites, it can make a difference. And we deploy, the trial runs well, and then we discuss with the customer, and they clearly tell us, we're not going to buy the hardware. I mean, we just don't want to purchase it. So it's a nice solution, but we need something more. And we started to iterate. Usually in this stage, I've seen many projects, they give up. So the customer is not interested. But we still try to push it a little bit forward and find a new value for the data we're already collecting. And it turns out that during that time, it was approximately April, I have a small allergy on flowers, and I realized that actually my allergies just gives me a list, like here is like 2 months, you can't go to parks. Like, thanks a lot, that's very precise information, like 2 months, no parks. And I realized that essentially all the information we have about environment is not, first of all, real time, and second is it's not accurate. So we don't really know what is going on the next street. So we extrapolate from satellite images, we extrapolate from meteo stations that are placed every 330 square kilometers, but we really don't know. But I needed to know it next street, because I don't want to cough and sneeze, and it's not a very pleasant situation. And I think that was the moment when I realized that the value of the data that we still were collecting for the sites, but also for other people. And we changed the business model. And I think that was the driver for sensing as a service success. And we said that we're not going to sell sensors now. It's you get the sensors for free. What we're going to do is we're going to monetize the data, and we're going to share revenues.
So I want to definitely come back to that. As you know, I have a lot of interest in monetizing data and the value of data. And now we've heard for a third time, business transformation being the core of what we're talking about. But I want to get everybody to have a chance to say hello.
Hey, good morning. So I'm Hatem Ouslati. I'm the CEO and co-founder of IoTerop. And so thank you very much for this prize, this award. It's just delighted to be here in front of you. And it's just a blast for me to be just in front of Huawei, Nokia, Intel. We're a startup company, a 10 people company. So being here is just a blast.
And the award was for?
Well, we actually, well, I'll tell you a story about how we started.
Okay.
Right? So I'm a former Intel guy. And so I worked in my experience, we worked in big groups, so including Intel. And we decided to leave Intel, the big group, to create our own company. And we wanted to, of course, to make innovation or routes and or way to go. And we were wondering how we would change this world, how we would change the way IoT is shaping our world today. And we started to think about what would be the hardest industry to push innovation into. And actually, we chose the most difficult one, the nuclear sector. And we chose as well the most difficult company to push innovation into, which was EDF in France. So extremely difficult to enter in that business. But here, well, you know, French are almost sometimes quite defending on innovation. But here we found very good interlocutors, very good people to work with. So with EDF partners and the director of the nuclear units, we really, you know, work together and try to push innovation on such an old industry. So basically, what we've done is that, you know, we try to analyze what were the processes where EDF was losing time. And typically, a lot of things in the nuclear industry are done by people manually. So I give you an example. So for example, in our case, where there are some automates, all automates that are qualified in nuclear safety, and those automates are typically handling turbines, pumps, monitoring. And when there is something happening on those things, you know, you have cathodic screens printing some lines, and 3 times a day, people just walk in front of those machines and just report manually the issues and then put that in an Excel sheet, right? It's not really efficient. So how can we improve that process and making sure we can still comply with all the nuclear safety constraints that we need to cope with, right? It's essential. So we decided to invent something that has never been done before. We put some non-intrusive technology based on smart camera that we build ourselves that observes those automates and try in real time report all the data seamlessly to a platform. So we build not only the connected object, we build the network infrastructure, and we build also the IoT application able to monitor those things remotely and in real time. So it was really a significant innovation helping people to actually optimize the processes and an extremely good gain of time for EDF people.
So 4 very different messages, although they all were based in business transformation, right?
Right.
Transformation either for yourself or for your customer.
Yeah.
In your case, for your customer. I think we've got great stories and all fantastic winners. And I want to congratulate all of you for your wins.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I've been collecting questions as they spoke. I'd love to tell you I wrote them last night, but I didn't. I've got some questions to ask, but I suspect you may have some questions to ask. And there are microphones. There are 2 microphones, one on the left, one on the right. And we'd love to take your questions. In the meantime, to get us started, I'm going to ask a couple of questions. And if you're interested in asking anybody or all of them a question, by all means, come up to the mic. Otherwise, you're going to have to bear with mine, and you really don't want to do that. So my first question, unsurprisingly, is about business transformation. In the case of yourself, or the case of innovating in a legacy company like EDF, or in a case of convincing companies to work with their direct competitors, certainly not easy, or in the case of trying to convince your customers that they have to transform their businesses, how do we get there? What's the magic? What's the step that says, we've got to change the way we do business? Is it revenue-based? Is it income-based? What is it? I mean, people hate, change managers get paid well because it's hard to change.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, that's an old saw. How do we get past that? How did your organization get past that? You want to try a shot?
Okay. So, it's very, very difficult just to persuade some kind of the traditional factory or manufacturer to just to transform business from from the traditional way to the innovative way. So, but for this kind of the vehicle and for the vehicle manufacturer company, so they are thinking about that. They have this kind of the revenue driving, right? They have the business transformation internally in motion, how to just to resolve that problem. So that's why they're seeking this kind of the technologies. Because previously, the technology is not so mature enough. But now, I think everything just is ready for them to build this kind of the platform. So it's, how to say, when we just propose this kind of the solutions to the customer, they are suddenly to find out, this is a way. This is what we want. So that's why.
This is what we want. That's what I'm asking, though. This is what we want because for revenue reasons, for return reasons. What's driving them?
For the for the revenue reasons, and also for the business transformation reasons. So they need just to transform themselves from the traditional manufacturer to this kind of a service provider.
So part of what's happening is somebody opened up the Financial Times at page 2 where it said, digital transformation is changing everybody. And the CEO called the CIO and said, what are we doing about digital transformation?
He's just
what drives it?
You know that they drive themselves, they wanted to just to think about how to kind of increase the revenue so largely. Now there are this kind of, vehicle basis now is so, so competitive. If they just don't just transform themselves to the new area, so they cannot drive themselves the revenue income so incredible increase. So that's why they're thinking about that, how they can just cross industry, how they can just transform their business model.
So it's the fear of competition is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Is that something you see at Nokia as well? I mean, Nokia's been through its own transformations over the last 10 years.
I'm not sure.
I was nice.
Yeah, I would support that. Yes, it's of course the competition and telecom market is fierce today, as you all know. 5G competition is heating up a lot. Also, there is an interest in developments in open RAN systems and all those things coming like from open source unexpectedly, from the hardware, from companies. But I guess it's always difficult to quantify, like in a slide, what makes people change their minds about their business model. That's not. I don't think that's possible even.
It's just me. It's a secret. Well, I'll keep it to myself. No one else is listening.
So I think it's all about. It's really working with people. I don't have any other option. So you just, if you start working and the person pushes back, it's just persevere further, and that's it. You just keep pushing back and counter-argumenting and talking and discussing, because there is a defense mechanism in everyone, from CIO to CEO. They have certain beliefs that you try and want to change, and that always takes time. And if you just go and persevere and step by step, explaining each step, you'll get there. It's not a magic bullet. You cannot skip or hack this thing.
But I want to explore this just a little bit more, because there are other impediments to changing, changing in general, to transformation, to business transformation. One of them you actually talked about and I think is a really important one, is dealing with competitors. Now, this is something that I've been doing for 30 years at the Object Management Group and the Industrial Internet Consortium, is getting competitors to work together under antitrust cover. That's hard to do. So I'm interested if you have any secrets that you can divulge.
I think one thing you talked about business transformation. I think it's really important when you start on a project to have a clear understanding in your own mind what problem you're trying to solve. And I'll maybe give you a real world example. When we started on secure device onboarding, 4 years ago, the feeling was, look, we're going to solve an industry issue here on how you can automate secure onboarding of technology. And the first reaction you have is, well, great, this is a revenue opportunity, right? You've got a problem, you've got a need, you've got a solution, equals revenue. But then you have to sort of step back and say, for sure, you could go down that path. But sometimes you have to say, well, look, is that the way that we all get to win? So we could make a bit of money doing that. But actually, sometimes it's better to step back and say, is that really the big win? And in the case of IoT, it's so fragmented that I think the big win is not just making it easy for us, it's making it easy for everyone. And that's the point. As soon as you realize, well, maybe in our case, it's not about the money in terms of SDO, it's about what it enables for the industry. And if this industry grows, we will all be the beneficiaries of it. And it's at that point that you realize, hey, we don't need to go it alone. There's no need. Let's reach across the aisles. Let's talk to people in the industry, some of which, as you say, may be perceived to be competitors. And some days you compete and sometimes you partner. It's a complex industry and you have to be able to understand which days you're competing. Is that a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? And which days are we actually going to say, no, this is when we partner because we're going to partner for the industry. And as soon as you have that candid dialogue with people and they understand where you're coming from, then you can move the ball forward and say, okay, let's solve this together. And then people realize that you're being honest, you're being candid. And then I think just as your consortium shows, you can get people behind a common vision and you can really focus on executing it.
So that actually matches my own experience. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I simply say it as you're taking a bet, basically, that a smaller slice of a bigger pie is more than the bigger slice of a smaller pie.
Absolutely. All boats rise, right? And I think that's exactly how we
choose your metaphor. It's okay. I really wanted to ask you, Hatem, because it's the number one impediment to change is regulation. And EDF is about as regulated could be. I mean, not only electricity, but nuclear energy, right?
Right.
How do we get to the point of convincing them that the regulatory overhead is worth the time and trouble to make the change? I mean, it's got to have been some revenue-based or quality-based or something.
It's very challenging, especially from a start perspective. Can you imagine? We don't have the human power that Huawei can have, or the financial power that Intel can have, or legitimacy that Nokia has. So you need to, it's a question of trust, and a question of achievement, and a question of willing. So typically, you need to cope with those constraints, and also your customer need to understand that there are some risks working in such environments and working with such a small-sized innovative companies. So they need to take this risk into account and we need to move forward. We need to forward and change the lines. That's what we need to do. And people need to be open-minded in order to effectively cope with those regulations, but at some times take shortcuts to push further and push the innovation further, breaking a bit the lines and try to still perform the innovation.
But for regulated industries, not just nuclear power, but insurance and medicine and so forth,
Right.
it's hard to change because you have to get new regulatory oversight, you have to get approvals. I mean, I assume you had to go through those steps.
Yes, absolutely. We needed to go through those steps, but we were well supported by EDF that knows very well how to help us to go through those regulation issues and how to work through them.
So they were motivated, is what you're saying.
Yes, absolutely. They were motivated into getting through those processes and help us to go through those processes.
Well, got a question right here. There are 3 microphones actually, left, right, and center. By all means.
Hi, Shyam from Oracle. My question is follow-up to what Dr. Soley asked you about how do you get competitors working together. IIC and others, the test beds, they are a great way to get different companies working together for the prototype to work on the concept. But when you want to scale to commercial level, it's very hard to convince these competing companies that who will sell it, how does each company maximize their pie, and they don't think in terms of what's good for the industry, because what's good for the next quarter, next fiscal year. So any tips you have to share how to take, like in your case, from iteration is possible when you are designing the problem, but when you want to scale it commercially, no iterations. They want a ready solution which salespeople can go and sell.
So who takes the long view, I guess is your question, right? I mean, obviously these people take the long view, but there's got to be somebody inside the organization that does as well. Anybody want that?
I think it's absolutely a great point. My sort of analogy, it's like spinning plates to try and really get the industry to move forward. You know, you're not just spinning one plate, you're spinning 5 plates. And if they don't all spin at the same time because someone says, you know what, I need to worry about today's problem, tomorrow's revenue, I'm not going to worry about that, then things kind of grind to a halt and, your plates fall down, you go nowhere. I think one of the things you can do, or at least what we've been trying to do, is to make the steps for people to engage with you as small as possible, so that the friction as they on-ramp to your solution to engage is something where it's palatable. So I think in the end, if you walk in and say, on Monday morning, would you assign 100 people to this project? You're probably going to get a very short answer. But if you could say, look, we'd like to work with you on a POC, and I know people now are increasingly talking about POVs, proof of value, then I think at least people start to incrementally get on board. They feel the pull of the industry. They start to see results, and then they can build up on that story. But it's a slow journey. And I agree, it would be much nicer, as you say, if we could all just say, hey, I'm in for 100 guys. That just isn't how this world works. And patience is almost a prerequisite, I think, if we want to solve some of these things.
Oh, let's be serious. The award helps too.
Oh, undoubtedly. I promise you, it'll take pride of place.
But I think part of Shyam's question is who takes the long view, right? So in your case, it might be you, but is there somebody higher level that you had to convince? Do you have pictures? That was nasty.
No, of course, if we talk about innovations in global companies, you have to convince upper management to finance this innovation. And yes, it takes some time, but essentially it's not very difficult because you're already working in innovations. So it implies that you are hypothesizing and you are making things that do not have a valid outcome from day one. So the point, in my case, in my experience, like you mentioned about your question, it was very difficult in the beginning because even inside one operator, marketing doesn't speak to operations, right? And we had to do this part, this intermediate, even though they are one company, not Cellcom, by the way. There everything was smooth. However, I think people are being united by goal, even though they have different agendas, but still, if the goal is worth enough, they get somehow united. You just, if you are the driver, it's very important to understand who is the driver. In our case, we were the driver because we are interested in a long-term, the sensing service has long-term implications for Nokia in many aspects. But we just went a little bit further. So if, for example, everyone was expecting, like, can you please give us a demo for data clients, so for a city who would buy the data? Can you give us the demo, like how do they see the data, how they calculate the dust, how they calculate the noise, what's the propagation, what's the... So all those things is like not our core business, but we did that just to get it through. But at some point of time, the wheel starts spinning itself. Because everyone understands you won't back off, you won't back down, you're just going to push forward with or without them. And at some point of time, I think if the goal is good enough, they get involved. At least that is my experience.
So that's a discussion about innovation in general. Does that resonate with you as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a step-by-step approach and a long journey. So typically, you need to onboard your customers, and they need to start from a use case, right? So in our specific case, it was really trying to optimize the way the maintenance processes were done in the nuclear site. So obviously, most people know very well what to do on a daily basis, and you need to spend time understanding their problems, right? And you need to onboard them in shaping the solution, and then take this solution on the paper, and then go into proof of concept, go into experimentations, and then step by step you prove that your solution is working, and then you take it to the next steps. So it's a long journey. You need to be patient.
So we heard a couple of lessons that I think are worth understanding. Please come on up to the mic. We have a couple of things that I heard that I think are worth mentioning, just pulling out in 1 second, Klaus. So this is one, step-by-step innovation, and second, a shared goal. I think that's extremely important, and that's my experience as well. You have to have a shared goal or you're not going anywhere.
I don't know if what you have been doing was more a reformation or a revolution for these other companies, but what is more difficult to do? Is it to overcome the not invented here syndrome to bring this into the other company, or is it the own profit in the house is not heard? What is more difficult?
Somebody want to take that?
Yeah, can I take?
Yeah, because
it resonates a lot with.
Go ahead, Ilia.
Once we proposed to the operator the revenue sharing model, because where we said basically, okay, sensors are free for you. The question was like, okay, so they can replicate the system. It's not difficult if you think about this. You have a gateway, you have a couple of environmental sensors, you build the system, you get an IoT management platform, you get analytics, and you're done, basically. So we had this question immediately, like operators can replicate the same solution. But the business model changed that. The business, because the client thinks, okay, so I need to invest to replicate something, or I get it for free. Yes, it comes with conditions, of course, but I still get it for free. I don't have to, build a business case, 1 year approvals, and get it there. But the business model sometimes changes that. And just one thing about not inventing syndrome here, and a shared goal also. I guess the goal should be really good. I mean, it should be a really, really, really good one. So if you come with improvement of 10% of customer costs, for example, with the solution, yeah, it sounds good. But in my experience, they want 200% improvement. That gets the attention.
But then what happens if you miss that goal?
You still improved on 10%, right?
That's an important point.
You still delivered, yes, well, it was not 200%, but next situation,
yeah, it was 10%, so you're still fired, but I like the project.
Yes.
Is that something you've seen yourself?
Yes, you know that, just like what he mentioned about this kind of the business model. In Huawei, we can think about that we are a big company, so we have this kind of responsibility, how we can just to drive this kind of the industry, so move so fast.
So that's why we think about how to build this kind of the, how to say, open platform, and to try to make this kind of the, how to say, easily applications just for the ecosystems. So they can just to make that application just on our platform. So we try to just to trial this kind of platform in such kind of the big companies together, to invest together. So for this kind of the, how to say, we call it joint innovation, and joint, how to say, just kind of a project-based. Yeah. So step by step to, how to say, move forward.
Oh, it's the same lesson we already heard, step by step. Oh.
Yes, right.
But
I think there was another question over here. Please come on up.
I'm Brian from Logic PD, and I've heard last couple of days hundreds of use cases, millions of use cases.
That's
They all
good.
have individual stories. And I remember some other greenfield industries years gone past, and eventually there's some standards, some methodologies that come out. I was wondering if there are some commonalities, some common methodologies, standards that you see starting to evolve through this.
Good question.
I can take this one.
Go ahead.
Well, this is exactly our vision. I mean, we need to capitalize on standards. Standards is the only way to face this fragmentation. And that's the reason why at our stage we are involved deeply in the standardization efforts in the IoT. And we're especially involved in the Open Mobile Alliance that defines the way a device needs to have a common language so that to interoperate. This is extremely important because without solving this fragmentation issue, the IoT market cannot raise up to the point we expect it to raise. So this is really a key point, and we strongly involved in such efforts.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we often talk about innovation, but I would argue that's the fun bit. Everybody likes to innovate. You put 100 engineers in a room and you have 100 ideas. So innovation, it's important, but it's the bit everybody wants to get involved with. But I think the point you're making is having 100 ideas doesn't get us anywhere. What we need to do is kind of align on which are the ones that really matter, and on those, they solve major problems, and then as an industry, we get behind them and we work together to solve them. And if you look in other industries, I look at even things as mundane as USB, which, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, but we all take it so for granted. You just plug it in and it sort of seems to work. I think we need that in IoT. You need that, just the feeling that the plumbing just works. And I think that is all about standards. If USB, there were 17 flavors of USB, we wouldn't have the ecosystem you have today.
I think there are 17.
Well, I think there's, yeah. Well, imagine if there'd be no standardization. But my point is, I absolutely agree. We need to rally around some fundamental issues and solve it together, and then drive those into the industry, either as de facto or industry bodies.
Actually, to that point, 17 standards are a whole lot better than infinity. That's one of the, so I'm going to take a personal on this one. I've been an executive at an international standards organization for 29 years and 1 day. It was yesterday, in fact.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. And we actually strongly believe that you can almost never get down to one standard, but if you can get down to a few, you've succeeded. You've made it possible to build a market on top of that, on top of those standards. So that's what you do. Don't try to do something impossible. Anybody else want to take a crack at that?
Just this kind of a standard. I think we should just to do more about this kind of a standard, because nowadays IoT is just like an innovative way to transform this kind of business. Nobody knows this kind of the standards for this kind of the industrial area, even the cross industry. You know that Huawei just trying to just be the very is an important role just in this kind of the area. So we try to invest a lot for this kind of standard together with ISA, with some kind of the organizations. So this is what we want to do. Yeah.
We only have about, we have about 5 minutes left, so come quick, and ask your question, and we'll give them one chance each to answer the question down the line.
Thank you. I have a complementary question about standardization. So
who would you like to compliment? I'm sorry.
Yes, it's about standards. Yes, today, as you said, you very well explained, it's very fragmented, a lot of gateways, a lot of work for integrators, revenues for integrators. In the telecom world, of course, the history is made of a lot of standards protocols, so the culture in the telecom industry is much more focused on standards, less in the rest of the IT industry. So my question is, what will be the impact of the 5G arrival on the, it's a very large question, but anyway, it can modify the business models. And a complementary question is about the intelligence. Where will it be, in the cloud or in the devices? It's also...
I can answer that question, just yes, but I'll give it 1 minute each because we've got 5 minutes left. Go ahead. I bet you want to say something about 5G.
Just 2 comments. 5G, usually in life they always say is a compromise, right? You can have A, you can have B, you can never have A and B. And when you look at what 5G promises, it promises speed, it promises low latency, it promises low power. If it delivers on those promises, I think it can have a very dramatic impact on our industry. So that would be my kind of comments on. And the second question, I think, related
Second question was, where's the intelligence? Edge, fog, or cloud?
And I think, again, almost back to that latency question. If you can solve the problem at the edge, there's a lot to like about doing that. Obviously, you reduce cloud traffic, you reduce latency. So I think, one of the things, and it's no secret, Intel is really focused on, is moving the intelligence to the edge, whether it's video, with things like OpenVINO initiatives, but really getting intelligence to the edge. We love data centers, clearly, but still getting intelligence to the edge is absolutely a theme that we think will run and run.
The whole world should be a data center, right? There should be a processor everywhere.
We love data center, but we really believe that for IoT, moving some of that compute close to the rock face, so to speak, is fundamental.
Doesn't that really mean do it where you have the bandwidth? If you don't have bandwidth, you're going to do it probably closer to the edge, or perhaps in the fog, or something like that?
I think you have bandwidth, I think you have latency, you have resiliency, and I think people often talk about autonomous cars. I don't think many of us would want our brakes based on a cloud-based system. You feel free. Even if the latency was there, I'd suggest you probably still wouldn't want it. You need that local intelligence.
In my conversation at Huawei's research lab in Munich, I had an interesting conversation about 2 cars closing at 150 kilometers per hour combined speed, 200 meters apart, and communicating by, I don't care, 5G, 4G, 3G, we're all going to die.
But anyway, you say now, definitely 5G is coming, right? So we cannot just stop this kind of things, just stop this talking. So you say that we are trying to think about how we can use this kind of 5G technologies, but not only just by using this kind of current technology, but also we can combine together. Because you know that we have tried to provide different kind of the connectivity method, so the customer can choose just based on their scenarios. And also you see that now the industrial network, they need different kind of the latency, and the different kind of the they are so time sensitive. So that's why we trying to make this kind of things so advanced in this kind of area, just like we call that is a time sensitive network. Yeah. So this is one of this kind of technology.
I will just add to that right now they don't want choice. They want to understand what works and what doesn't work. Right. It's harder than choice. It's what have you tried and what has worked. Ilia, I'm going to give you've got a minute.
Okay. I must admit that I'm a little bit anarchist regarding standards, because my job is to break the rules and find ways that no one ever seen before. So I guess I understand the pain when you have to work with a bunch of different protocols.
You're a bad man.
Yeah,
I know. Okay, go ahead.
That's my job. So I understand the pain, and I don't think that standards will solve this pain. I think that if we take telco, it's a great industry, and of course 5G might change things, and probably it will when it comes. However, telco is a highly regulated area, and the amount of innovations coming out of telco is not compared to the amount of innovations coming from unregulated areas. That's my, let's say, benchmark that I challenge myself. And regarding the questions, like, yes, there are lots of providers, there are lots of different gateways, they're all different. But I think the point is that in our case, you need to understand that working in unclear, unstandardized conditions is a competitive advantage today. So it's tough to work in conditions when standards are changing, etc. But if you organize your teams, your deliverables around the fact that the platform might change rapidly, if you choose another provider, the protocols might change, you have to rebuild some things. But if you build around that and your business case and everything, the business models, that can at least give you a heads up compared to everyone else who is waiting for the standard.
We could have a whole nother panel just about that, because standards are the greatest reason for innovation, the greatest possibility for innovation in the world today. So there. Hatem, I think you get the last word.
Right. So I'm a strong believer of effectively intelligence on the edge. And 5G will really revolutionize the way or daily work is done today. But in order to this intelligence to happen, I mean, interoperability is key in making it true, in making it reality. And maybe, Ilia, I'm sorry to say the reverse, but I strongly believe that standards will be the key to solve this interoperability problems today and make edge intelligence possible.
If I can go a little bit over time, I'll also say 5G is about getting bits from here to there. The problem is not getting bits from here to there. The problem is, what do the bits mean? So you're going to hear the word semantics a lot over the next year. And about 85% of all standards at OMG are focused on semantic representation, because that's the hard part.
Right.
Protocols are easy.
Sure.
Thank you very much. And congratulations again to our winners. And thanks for coming this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.